speakers. I will not make an introduction because I might come back at the end. Somehow, we all know that many things are moving on in the field of technologies. AI, very often considered as just artificial intelligence, but it's one out of about 8 so-called technologies contributing to digital transformation. And that's important to see and to look at. Now we have the pleasure to welcome the Deputy Secretary General of ITU, Tomas Lamanauskas. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Really appreciate, and Happy New Year, everyone. It's really great to start this year with this event. So, and I think now it's being the pleasure, already I think 2 years now in a row to join it, and it's always the pleasure to contribute. And I guess, as you rightly mentioned, artificial intelligence, as in the context of technology, is now probably something that we're hearing every day. Sometimes, a lot of times when you read the media for the bad, but I think then when you look deeper, whether it's really for the bad is the question, and I'll talk about that. Sometimes there was this joke made in one of the conferences that now started to copy. It's about the 2 people who come to the restaurant, and one really complains about the food and says, "Look, the food is really bad here, and it's not enough of it." So I think that's a lot of, so for me, that's a joke that a lot of times describes how we feel a lot of times about artificial intelligence. We complain about it, we complain about misinformation, we complain about potential job losses, we complain about potential biases and other things, but then at the same time we want to use it and we want our countries to have more of it, So, and I think that's a reality. I think, and the reality is because it has a potential of huge transformational changes. Again, from the economists who tell you that these transformational changes don't always feel fully translated yet into the real economy, but at least predictions are high. We talk about $5 trillion US dollars in market value by 2033. We also see some specific applications. If you read The Economist just last, you see that, for example, using AI in pharma can double the success of the drug tests, and efficiency of drugs, So again, and you can see that through the different areas, from education to, as I mentioned, health and others. You use that in the, to speed the, in the corporate environment, to speed operational processes and others. We still have, of course, the big gap on adoption, So, and I think Microsoft just released a survey that says, AI adoption in global North, 25%, global South, 14%. I find it still very optimistic when we say 14% in global South. I'm pretty sure this is like the countries that were surveyed, because, of course, that gap in adoption is very huge. You have a number of countries where that's prevalent, where it's part of the daily life, like, using ChatGPT or Copilot and other talks, in your daily life, and having PhD trained engineers, and I have countries that where mostly AI meaning is data labeling still by low-skilled workers. This is a new low-skilled economy creation, which is not necessarily very good. So interesting, and then you have some fears, and one of the fears is on the kind of macro level is the fear about job losses, and people say, look, will AI replace all of us? Well, now, just to already start jumping on it, well, now it doesn't seem that a lot of studies, including colleagues here from ILO, who usually, very protective of the workers, they don't seem that fearful about the job losses. They actually look at the high-income economies. The job losses can maybe reach around 5.5%. AI impacted actual low-income economies lower because of less white-collar jobs, so around 0.4%. And many more jobs, actually around 10 to 15% of jobs will be augmented. So again, a lot of message now that we're hearing is that actually AI is still, at least now, a pretty optimistic message. There's opportunity to augment, to make us better, to work better. And back to that saying that the AI will not replace us, the person who knows how to use AI better will do. So I think really it's about how to get those skills to do that. Interestingly, we have what they call optimism gap. And I think this is a very interesting element where we say, like the people who have the AI actually don't like it much less than the people who don't have it, So, and if you look at the studies that show that around two-thirds of the people in Europe are afraid of AI-induced job losses, whereas two-thirds of the people in the developing world, around 70%, they are looking forward to AI to improve their public services and lives. And I guess they're looking at AI in a very positive way. So it's also very interestingly that I think the people, when we have it, we probably, less see the value of that because we already are used to the value of that, and we're starting interfering the negativity. Whereas the people who don't have a high level of access, let's say, to current health systems or to educational systems, they see the opportunity to use AI for leapfrogging that, and that opportunity, of course, it could be very strong potential. What we also now, of course, see the big debate, and that's now very recently, this huge debate about the misinformation, disinformation, but also effects for the mental health and mental health of different groups, with the big debate about children. And you probably followed some discussions, let's see, starting from Australia, but now spreading to other countries. Now the recent about the restricting social media use to the minors, but actually a lot of times driven by the fact what algorithms are feeding those minors. The recent very strong discussion, quick discussion about the using AI for producing certain, let's say, pictures of the real people that are not considered ethical or even legal, and how to restrict that. This is a huge debate. Actually, it's very interesting. Just a preview. So on 19th of January, I think it's Monday, Committee of the Rights of Child, together with a number of organizations, including ITU, will be launching the statement of AI and rights of the child. So again, looking in some of the principles through the Convention on the Rights of the Child that we need to think about when we introduce AI and in terms of children. But there's definitely debate. That debate hasn't settled. I think one interesting thing about this is everything is moving, and the narrative is changing. Like if like 2 years ago it was all about, let's say 4 years ago it's always about opportunities and emerging opportunities. 2 years ago it was all about risk and safety. A year ago it was all about opportunities again and investment. Now it's back about risks and information. So I think this kind of pendulum of narrative swings how good or bad it is, So I think it's really when it's based on uncertainty, both as I mentioned economically, we say it's a huge value. If you look at the stock market, it's a huge AI-induced stock boom, but everyone is worried: will it last? When will it stop? Will it actually materialize? There's lots of uncertainty. The same from the benefits, how the world will change. So still there. So now, just very quickly to wrap up from my two perspectives, what we think are important. So first of all, in the policy environment, and I think we have the global emerging policy environment there, and we have already a number of UN initiatives there. So as you know, Global Digital Compact that was adopted now like nearly a year and a half ago, but now resulted into new institutions globally. So such a scientific panel on AI that Secretary General is about to announce proposed composition to the General Assembly to approve that will review, let's say, AI development globally, and also global dialogue on AI governance that will take place, again, General Assembly mandated process. And that will take place next year in July in Geneva, side by side, Imagine Soft AI for Good Summit. And again, so that means a review on a global level, but of course this needs to translate into policies on the local level and national level. There's still a huge gap. Let's say 85% of countries don't have AI-related regulations, more than half don't have policies. So we have a global debate, but we still have a national debate to plug. Infrastructure is still important, so that's another area. And when you look at about compute capacity, like a very simple way to measure, Africa as a whole has around 1% of it, with a 20% population. 90% of data centers and capacity are basically owned by the companies from 2 countries. So it's very huge disparity, and without infrastructure is still needed there. Unless if you don't have that, you will not breach that. Skills. And again, if you look at the skills building, and that's how you actually make AI beneficial. And when we talk about skills, it's how to use it for benefit, but also how to distinguish good from bad and risky. So again, only one third of developing countries have AI education strategies now. We're still just emerging area here. And And this is something that needs to be resolved. So policy, infrastructure, skills. And ITU contributes a lot of things. I mentioned, I'm in the past from our Global AI Summit, from our work on standards, and I think Doreen mentioned a little bit this morning from our work on AI skills, and now some initiatives on infrastructure as well. I would be happy to extend it more, but I think as an opening, I'd rather put it as a broader context rather than speak specific to initiatives. So I think with that, over to you.
Perfect. Perfect, Thomas. Thank you very, very much for keeping the time, for thanking you for the content you provided us. It's very much revealing, and we certainly are looking forward to July of this year and this famously announced AI summit. And I give the word to Mr. Korosi.
Thank you very much, Walter. I will try to reflect on some of the questions put forward to us in the program, but first coming back to what you have mentioned, the 8 disruptive technologies. Without going into details on them, quantum technology and fusion energy and so on, what is the common phenomena among those 8? First and foremost, AI is giving a qualitative change to all of them. So they will be all changed. The second, all must have a regulatory framework. Because if we don't, then we cannot master how they are going to change our lives. Now some remarks. Coming to AI, and actually, I would like to speak about AGI more precisely, but first and foremost, let me keep it a little bit more broadly. What is the difference between science and technology in this case? Today's science used to be the tomorrow's technology. Today, with AI development, there is a huge acceleration, and the time difference between the two is actually collapsing. The other thing that is collapsing is the actors. There used to be institutions that develop science, then spin off for technology, and technologies will come through some production companies. Now these 2-3 actors are collapsing into one. And almost all of them are private companies with their own rules. Speaking about regulations, which was in our program, regulations and governance, it is not my observation, but the most substantial gaps exist in domains of risk assessment, safety framework, and information sharing. And this is caused by limited disclosure, weak evidence of systematic safety processes, and uneven adoption of robust evaluation practices. It is characteristic across the board to all major companies who are involved in AI or AGI development. The second is the existential safety remains the industry's core structural weakness. And I'm listing it because at the end of the day, when we think about what kind of regulations we may have next in half a year time, or maybe a little bit later even, what should be kept in mind? Time frame to bring risk control to the pace of development of technology, because these two are very, very different today. The technology is being developed much faster than the safety systems. So if we can equalize the two, we might be a little bit better off. And another specificity, what we cannot forget, it would be ideal, coming back to the point of Volkan, we can be romantic and we can be realistic. 80% of AGI development today is taking place in 2 countries. So we must have those 2 countries on board when we think about regulations and governance. Now there are some strange trends. What opinion leaders, politicians, decision makers must keep in mind. One trend is the driver of the technology and development, AGI development, is to secure advantage in the AI race. It's a geopolitical race. So if we neglect it, we will fail. The second is even stranger. The other objective is to winning a race in economic gains. But how strange it could be, it is, according to the current evidence, it is possible to win the AI technology race. It means keep the leading position and lose the economic superiority. That's what we are witnessing in the case of US and China. The difference between the two, winning the technology race and losing the economic one, the economic superiority is determined not only by technology race, but also how new technologies can rely on stable industrial, energy, and institutional foundation, meaning you must have an industrial strategy. If a country does not have a policy, an industrial policy or strategy, then it's a disadvantage. So when we talk about international governance and regulations, I would immediately ask back, governance for what? Or governance of what? In broad terms, AI, or let's talk about those issues that really cause much of the headaches and risk factors in the near future, means AGI. And we are very close. AGI is supposed to appear. You may know that AGI is capable of matching humans across nearly all cognitive tasks. Is supposed to appear within 4 to 5 years or even less. In the international cooperation, we used to need from 3 to 10 years to regulate something seriously. I hope we can start the serious work later this year, but let's keep in mind that there is a time frame we have to match. And the second is, in all our regulatory attempts, we used to regulate human behavior. What we must do, what we must not do, what is the punishment, what is the award. It will be the first time when we will have to keep in mind to regulate something that is also outside of the scope of human behavior. We don't have any experience for that yet. So the reasonable expectation when we talk about future regulations and future governance could be to reach basic agreements on risk control, establishing a safety regime, and verifying the implementation. But there are sobering realities for the time being. Key actors are not equally interested in going for a kind of regulatory exercise. As I mentioned, AGI development is an organic part or a leading part of geopolitical competition. And a few months of advantage in the technological race might be more important than some extra expenses or some extra risks left unattended. Regulatory activities which took place so far are rather fragmented, be it in the EU, be it in the UN or UN agencies. UN agencies started doing their own regulatory attempts, but I'm afraid sometimes it seems to me is part of the turf fight among the UN agencies. So my humble suggestion would be the following, and it's not my my source, actually, together with Volkan and some other presidents of the General Assembly, we have been working on for quite a while, suggesting that we need a basic political agreement on regulations on AGI done by the UN General Assembly. And based on that, the agencies can do their own homework, and these possible agreement within the General Assembly may rely on four key points. One is to establish a global AGI observatory. The second, an international system of best practices and certification of secure and trustworthy AI that is entering the market. The third is to think about a UN Framework Convention on AGI. And the fourth, a feasibility study on UN AGI agency. I'm fully aware that it is not a fashionable time to create new agencies. But think about the potential consequences of what an unchecked, uncontrolled bunch of risks would mean for countries that are not prepared. Last but not least, since there was a question of disruptive technologies, AI, and sustainable development, what do we expect from the AI in terms of sustainability transition? I would like to see AI being our best ally, an agent for planning, verification of implementation for transition. I would like to see AI helping us developing algorithms for uncovering patterns and insights in interactions among various fields of operations. I would like to see AI creating more reliable scenarios upon mutual impacts. And I would like to see AI helping us better identifying danger zones and tipping points of our operations. And last but not least, run simulations before investments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Csaba. We certainly hope to come back on some of your issues, but I prefer first to listen to the others and give you the floor at the end. So we have Milica Pejanovic. She is not only now to NGIC, but to a number of other forums. Former Minister of Defense. I'm sure you are going to speak about automated weapon systems and the risks of them.
No, I will not. Thank you. That is for another time. So first of all, I do believe that this initiative of Nizam International Center to pursue with these meetings here in UN Geneva is something we should be, of course, supporting, because it's a great opportunity to share our thoughts on different issues, especially in these times when there is so much uncertainties and where at least the opportunity to talk among ourselves will give us a little bit of a better perspective or even some optimism in this reality we are all living in. And one of the elements which is defining that reality are, of course, these disruptive technologies and everything which is related with them. And as Tomas rightly said, there I would say, because of the fact that there is a lack of transparency and accountability, we are every year changing the narrative and approach to these issues. So I do remember very well that a couple of years ago we were in all fora, everywhere, in conferences, in all kinds of communities, talking about the threats, about challenges, about misinformation, about all these bad things. And of course, from the last year, we changed the narrative. Now we are about the development, about the investments in EU. So far that there is a fear of so-called end of this bubble, which might come, and the markets are somehow warning that there might be some problems there. So I do believe that it is because we are lacking, among other things, of course, these real governance mechanisms. And while we are lacking that, it's even more serious because actually we are in this age of very, very strong geopolitical competition. We are in this age where we are having fragmented digital ecosystem because of these geopolitical competitions and the existence of geopolitical lines. So coming to the artificial intelligence, we should be quite certain that it shouldn't be considered as a kind of some consumer product or something like that. It's not just the technology. If it would be just technology, it would be easier. It is a kind of strategic infrastructure, because when we are talking about AI, we are talking about clusters of computers, even supercomputers. We are talking about energy grids. We are talking about telecommunications networks, about connectivity. So it's a very complex ecosystem where each part is having its own logic. So to understand everything and to link everything together, we really do need a kind of global governance system that is shaping slowly, but too slow. We did have a year and a half ago this global digital compact, and we all expecting much more of that. Nothing much happened in the meantime. Maybe we weren't aware that things are somewhere in the background happening. As Tomas said, we will be having some kind of outcomes very recent times, in the next week or something like that. So probably then we will be in a position to see whether it is along the expectations we had. But anyway, whatever aspect of this huge system we are considering, there is a need of a global cooperation. I mean, there is no doubt about that, no dilemma. We shouldn't be put aside by some fears people are getting in, saying, no, you know, it's completely impossible, it's so complex, and there are these different interests of the different countries, of a private system and these big companies. Of course, that all exists around, but we shouldn't, I would say, be afraid by that. We should be using that as a kind of opportunity to go further on, because there is a number of reasons for that. First reason, I would say, would be that actually we are having this technology which doesn't recognize any national borders. So it's not something that could be appropriated by anyone, whoever, public, private, one state, the other state. Then also there is something we need to do in order to strengthen the innovation as such. Because imagine innovators, if they are, and developers, if they are in a position to face different frameworks, different regulation in whatever country they are doing, they will be put off. It will be a great problem for them, not to mention technical parts, which is interoperability of all these systems and so far and so on. So from that point, I think that the main point would be to recognize that regulation is an opportunity for all those who are working, so innovators, developers, whoever it is, including in this chain of value which is related with the artificial intelligence. So when we want to come to those who are in a position that might be lagging behind, be left behind, as UN glossary is saying us, when we are talking about this digital transition and transition towards the new technologies, then you would say very often that, you know, this regulation and everything which is related to that might be a reason why you are lagging behind. But actually, I would argue with that, because I do believe that some other reasons are behind the fact that you are lagging behind. It's a lack of investments, it's a lack of incentives to actually invest in what are digital transition projects. And on the other side, it's a low level of digital literacy. So when I'm talking about digital literacy as such, I'm not talking about that each and every one of us should be an expert. But I do believe that we need a wide public awareness what actually digital transition means. So you don't need to understand in depth what is that about, but you do need to understand what are the opportunities you are getting, and of course, what are the possible risks there. So I do believe that in order to avoid actually those inequalities which are real there is a couple of elements. One of them is an access to infrastructure, which is very important. So it is actually a foundation. Whatever you are doing when it comes to digital transformation, it is about providing access to infrastructure. So you shouldn't be in a position to have that access to infrastructure as a kind of afterthought. You know, we are doing something, oh, you know, we need an infrastructure for that. So we should start with that there. And then I do believe that even when you have an access, the job is not done. So the countries which are in these development phases, they need to have certain influence when it comes to governance as such. So what we need there is some kind of governance frameworks where you would be having not only all these countries taking part in consultation process. They should be designing that together. And that's the way how it could be better adopted for one side, and for the other side would be adapted to certain local specificities, local needs, and a way like that. So we do need still international structures. I don't believe that we should be having some new ones. We are having enough of those who are already in place. But it's not only about UN. It's about also World Bank. It's about IMF as well, who are having the money and everything. So I do think that they all should be at the side where they are offering some kind of deliverables, not just rhetoric as such. So that means they should be giving some co-financing for infrastructure, enabling shared capacities of the already existing infrastructure, enabling those platforms for co-governance, where actually countries could be contributing directly towards making decisions, and also having financing for those inclusive digital investments. So from that point, it should be a kind of using existing infrastructure of international organizations, but enriching it with some kind of multi-layered approach where all these elements would be taken account and where inclusivity as such would be a top priority. So without that, I doubt that we would be able to have the real results, specifically when it comes to inequalities and having this accountability which is needed, especially when it comes to private companies. What I read the other day, for example, is, you know, the number of those who are, for example, using this WhatsApp application. It's 3 billion. And there is a kind of AI assistant there, which we could be making a choice to use or not. But who is telling us that even if we don't select it, it's not working its part? So what is Meta doing or intend to do? They are going to mine all our data we are having in this conversation we are having, and they will monetize it. So where we are actually providing something for that company to get the money and the power they need. So how we will put ourselves as someone who are not having anything out of that to be included in the whole thing. I know it's very complex and very difficult, but there would be a way with the real governance structure.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Milica. the last question will certainly come up again. But that is a very, very pertinent one. When I asked about the 300 members of a so-called Association for Sustainable Digital Transformation, why they do not want to include American companies. They said, because of the big data, we do not want to get instrumentalized. We do not want to get masterminded. So, I mean, it's an issue to reflect upon. But we are certainly watching that in other continents. We are watching that in China, but in Africa and the Middle East, these catch-up meetings on where is AI and other related technology leading to is a big, big issue in the private sector. And we deal there with the private sector, not with government. Thank you, Milica. Then we come to Jan Fischer, former Prime Minister of the Czech Republic. He is a very renowned master of statistics. So we will hear some figures, I am sure. Please, Jan.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Be healthy and stay in a good spirit, if possible, in this very badly ill world. But let's do everything we want to stay optimistic. I'm very pleased to participate at this panel on technology, AI, and ethics of global transformation, especially in the room where many of you have carried responsibility not only for policies, but also for long-term resilience of societies. Let me start with a very simple, maybe trivial statement. Artificial intelligence, it's no longer a promise. AI, it's nothing like fashion, which is coming and then disappearing in a couple of days, weeks, years. This is reality. This is reality if we want and if we don't want. And it's already shaping how we work, what we trust, how markets allocate opportunities, and how states protect security. The real question is no longer whether AI will transform the world. The real question is what exactly will transform us into. AI is often presented as a choice between hope and fear. I believe it's both, because it represents something deeper. AI is a power, and power is never neutral, never neutral. It can expand human potential, but it can also scale human weaknesses. AI is a mirror of our priorities, then a multiplier of whatever we choose to put into it. And there is a hope, clearly. Artificial intelligence can help democratize expertise and expand access, whether in education, in medical diagnostics, in public services, or in climate modeling and energy efficiency. It can increase productivity in sectors that have been stagnant for many, many years. It can accelerate research and innovation and support decision-making in complex environments. But there is also a fear, and I think it's important to name it pretty clearly. AI can amplify misinformation and manipulation. It can sharpen polarization. It can enable surveillance at scale that earlier generations couldn't imagine. And it can produce outcomes that are difficult to explain, difficult to contest, and increasingly difficult to control. So perhaps the right question is not, is AI good or bad? Perhaps the right question is, who holds the steering wheel and who pays the price when things go wrong? When we talk about AI, we must also speak about the world in which it emerges, a world of geopolitical tensions and fragmented trust. It was mentioned several times before in previous panels about the crisis of trust. We are witnessing in a new kind of strategic competition where computing chips, cloud infrastructure, data, and talent are becoming even geopolitical assets. And this is not just a race for innovation. It's a race for influence, dependency, and strategic advantage. And here lies a dangerous paradox. Artificial intelligence is increasingly treated as a race. Yet AI safety, AI ethics, AI governance require cooperation, not racing. We risk sleepwalking into a logic of deploy first, regulate later, even in domains where errors do not lead to inconvenience, but to systemic harm. Economically, AI will be transformational, but not evenly. It will reshape work not only in factories, but in offices and in institutions. It will not only affect routine tasks, it will affect professional services, administration, accounting, legal workflows, customer support, compliance, even parts of medical documentation and diagnostics. And this is where I believe many societies may be caught off guard. The biggest disruption may hit middle skill, white-collar jobs, especially where tasks are repetitive, document-heavy, and rule-based. But the true question is not simply how many jobs will disappear. The deeper question is who captures the productivity gains and how quickly can protect social stability during transformation. This brings me to inequality. Will AI reduce inequality, social, generational, or regional, or will it deepen it? AI can reduce inequality if it expands access to learning, access to healthcare, access to services, access to global markets, even for small firms and remote regions. In that scenario, AI becomes a tool of inclusion. But AI can also deepen inequality through three mechanisms. First, economic inequality. If the gains accrue mainly to owners of capital and platforms while wages stagnate. Second, generational inequality. If younger workers adapt quickly while older workers are displaced without viable pathways. Third, regional inequalities. If investment and talent concentrate in a few AI hubs, leaving peripheral regions behind. And believe me, the inequalities, that's one of the nightmares of the current worsened current economy, globally and regionally as well. Technology doesn't not automatically democratize opportunity. Policy does. Now, when we speak about AI risks, it's helpful to think in several layers. There are immediate risks we can already see. Deepfakes, frauds, misinformation, cybercrime, bias in automated decisions. But there are structural risks which are more and more dangerous. Concentration of power, loss of privacy, surveillance, and the rise of new government's excuse. The algorithms decided. That's not my job. The algorithms did it. And then there are systemic risks. Strategic instability when AI accelerates military decision cycles, and the erosion of trust when societies can no longer agree on what is real. What is real? A civilization cannot function with truth, becomes optional. This takes us to the ethics. For me, AI ethics should not start with technology. It should start with human dignity and human agency. Efficiency is not the same as legitimacy. A decision can be efficient and still unacceptable if it's unaccountable, discriminatory, or impossible to contest. We cannot outsource moral responsibility to systems that do not carry moral responsibility. Some ask whether AI can replace human consciousness. This is a profound philosophical question. But even without answering it, we already know something important. Even if AI is not a person, which is not, it has power over persons. It shapes choices, attention, trust, and social fabric that alone demands ethical seriousness. And then there is a politics. Democracy depends on citizens making choices based on information they broadly trust. AI threatened this through micro-targeted persuasion, synthetic media, and what I could call reality fatigue. A moment when people stop believing anything at all. And that's the could be said a hidden but very clear paradox. Many often it's the same if you believe in everything, that's the same if you don't believe anything. And that's the current reality. It's very difficult to distinguish. So the last question, and last issue, and I am coming to the end. That's regulation and regulatory processes. We need them. There's no question about that. And these processes of regulation must be organized globally, not only on some domestic playground or something like that. That's not a national issue. It's a very international issue. But in this fragmented world, in the problems we are facing, not in AI, but in technologies, but in politics, geopolitics, it becomes extremely difficult. And this is very important to see what's the role of the AI or ICT business, role of private sector, what's the role of governments, and what's the role of the international organization. Please, let's believe that this situation will be under control. Otherwise, we are facing the very huge problems. But I would like to stay optimistic, as I say, anytime. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jan, for your staying or remaining optimist. We are certainly coming back on it. But recently I visited the company, and then the elderly gentleman, much younger than I, he asked me that his sons have asked him whether it would not be time to revert the pyramid of learning, that he would listen to the young, and not that the young should listen to the elderly. When it comes to AI, it's certainly also an issue. Maybe you reflect also on that when we come to the discussion. Thank you. So now, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first allow me to applaud the NGIC's capacity to convey very good people to talk together on the most urgent global issues. This is something to be noticed. Now, for my intervention, I prepared, I focus on two issues. One is the question, can artificial intelligence outperform humans? And the second one is the loss of consensual reality and the rise of deepfakes under the artificial intelligence avalanche. In a recent youth poll in October last year, 2025, made by Harvard University, young Americans, I quote the report, were more than 3 times as likely to say AI would destroy opportunities as create them. So is this feeling reflecting the reality? And in order to answer the question, can artificial intelligence outperform humans, we have some clues. What matters in answering this question is not the efficiency of the artificial intelligence, it's their capacity for autonomy. Humans have the ability to understand the world and act adaptively to achieve goals. And humans have a variety of skills to be combined and achieve goals. And beyond individual intelligence, there is also collective intelligence. Pursue goals rationally and achieve a prescribed level of reliability, it's not in the realm of artificial intelligence. They can generate knowledge, of course, from using a huge amount of data, but we should never forget that as Alan Turing, the founder of the computing machines, clearly stated already in 1950, AI machines are not explainable. AI can process an enormous amount of data, and for this very reason, they don't have the ability to say how they know what they claim to know. We cannot rely on their internal discipline. They are not deep matter. They are instrumentalized silicium. We humans, we have faith in creation, in creativity. The AI create almost nothing and have faith in nothing. AI are prejudged, while we are prejudiced. They produce knowledge, as I said, but not fundamental laws like we do produce in physics and whatever scientific domain, explaining the states and the dynamics in nature. How to match human capability while unable to produce fundamental knowledge? No way, at least for now. Now I would like to touch the second issue, the loss of a consensual reality and the rise of deepfakes under the AI avalanche. Many experts say that in 2025, last year, the slope, they say, of AI, which is the incorrect and even ugly content of AI-generated information, become a real feature, dominating the digital world. That is increasingly making truth online impossible to verify. A study by Microsoft showed that people can recognize AI generated videos only 62% of the time, 38% no. The study also shows that when AI is introduced into the workplace, not in automation in this industry, not in software, in workplace, to be clear, it lowers productivity. And in 95% of the organizations deploying AI, they get no noticeable return in investments. I repeat, workplace. As I said, the returns are good in software, in automation for the AI. That is also increasing productivity noticeably, as I just wanted to mention. But it's more than that. Delegating the intellectual work to machines, which is something very common now, is forcefully accompanied by two devastating facts. One, the erosion of the critical thinking. Second, the loss of the sense of responsibility. As MIT researchers found, that people using extensively LLMs, the large language models, show far less brain activity than those who don't. Finally, the permanent averaging, because what AI is doing essentially is averaging from the data. So the permanent averaging offered by AI is also producing the homogenization, the uniformization of thought, the loss of creativity. And more, it's ruining our history. Why? Because AI generates content, never memories. It's worse than propaganda, because propaganda at least has a purpose. Another emerging reality from the AI machines and their domination on the social media is the decline of the web, www. The users are not, as it used to be, in control. On the contrary, the strings are held by Google, Zuckerberg, Andreessen, Elon Musk, Sam Altman. All these AI companies spy on their customers in order to accumulate more and more data. This is the essence of their business. We define it as surveillance capitalism. I like to use that term. Customers become unintentionally captives. And normally, As a result, the big companies have power, the power to control the advertising market, pricing prices. I quote Cory Doctorow, who coined and wrote a book, The Enshittification. The objects of the internet have become spy tools, surreptitiously collecting information about us, our habits, our desires, our health, our political inclinations, and using it to manipulate our behavior. The algorithms are designed to maximize engagement. In fact, they amplify danger and sensationalism at the expense of truth, I unquote. So this is already a reality, not just in America, in the whole world. Today, we desperately need to breaking the new corporation shackles. Let's call it new freedom. We want not just technology in the online world, we want a moral attitude. Because, and I finish now, the ubiquitous use of AI makes me feel that perhaps eventually, like the formidable imagination of Karel Čapek in his famous book, The War with the Newts, or the Salamander War, we could end like being the servants of the AI. Thank you.
Thanks for Karel Čapek that you mentioned.
Very good.
Very famous Czech writer.
About the salamanders, we developed, we used them as slaves until they became the masters of the world.
Okay.
It's a very nice, very interesting, very fun. So.
Okay. Thank you. So we come to the final presentation or intervention, and that is presented by Reza Aliyev, Chief Sustainability Officer, NGIC. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for the privilege of being here with such distinguished speakers. I want to very briefly just share some of my thoughts and some data as well, just to maybe start with bringing a bit more optimism to it, but then show the risks of it as well. A bit more. I think we need it for the, to finish the long and very interesting day. So I think in terms of the data, that what shows us, and I think what Tomas mentioned as well, there are some big fears, but what the latest estimates show that AI, global AI, will help grow 38% of the global GDP by 2030, which is a lot of value creation. So from now until 2030, there'll be $15.7 trillion will be added to the global economy, based on AI, which is kind of backed by increased productivity, which is around 7 trillion, and 9 trillion for the kind of consumption increase, which is basically the total of China and India GDP together. So it's quite a big amount only in 4 years that will be added to the world economy. In terms of jobs, very interestingly, 2025, 75 million jobs were lost due to AI, thanks to AI, but 133 million jobs were created newly. So there is a net positive, so 58 million jobs were created globally. And it's very interesting to see the trends of how AI is being incorporated into the business world. So 34% of all business tasks currently, according to World Economic Forum, is done by machine, by technology, and only 66%, so 2/3, are kind of human-led in a way. So, and that what His Excellency Jan Fischer mentioned as well about decision-making. It's quite an interesting way of, we're moving away from responsibility to make the decisions, and we give it away to AI. So by 2028, 15 to 20% of all decisions made in corporate world will be automatic. So we give it away to AI, which it can be, of course, good, but also very, very dangerous. So what we see now is that if 20th century was really important in terms of shaped by control of the territory, of the resources, of energy and industrial capacity, now we're adding extra layers of what is important. So that's the computing power, it's data we mentioned, it's the algorithms and the capabilities. That really kind of shows that it's not the productivity story as the AI, but also it's a social transformation in terms of the title of this panel, global transformation, so social and labor transformation. So I want to focus on those things, for example, from the labor perspective. Just yesterday, Sadiq Khan, mayor of London, said that we should brace for massive impact on cities like London because all the white-collar jobs are facing risks of going. So Citigroup said that 54% of all the banking jobs will disappear thanks to AI. And some of the sectors like customer care will be fully gone, according to Sam Altman and some other professionals. So it's quite an interesting momentum to reflect on the job displacement. But at the same time, we shouldn't forget about the equity that still, as we speak now, 2.6 billion people do not have access to internet, so they're offline. How do we keep that, the 2.6 billion people in same pace as we go and move rapidly through the AI transformation? And I think the third thing to think about, and I'll come to the policies, is that it's not just the technological, it's a physical, it's not just the digital, it's a physical transformation. We need energy, we need water, we need land for it. And some countries don't have that, some countries don't have access to the chips to create the data centers, etc. With that, I think I wanted to a couple of weeks ago, I was with the two fathers and one mother of AI, with Joshua Bengio, with Jensen Huang, and with Fei-Fei Li. And I just wanted to share three very high-level thoughts on the ethics of AI and transformation, which was very different from all three of them, even though they're very, very engaged. So with Joshua Bengio's one, he was saying that AI is becoming, of course, increasingly autonomous and opaque and with bigger general purpose. But it's interesting said that it was quite risky, and the solution is not to pause the innovation or hold the innovation, but to put the guardrails within that. And I'll come to the governance briefly on my intervention. So it's a guardrail, safety, and interoperability. Whereas Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said that the AI is the most important technological advancement since electricity, discovery of electricity. And it's a new industrial revolution. But because of the AI moving now from digital to physical, it's becoming really dangerous. There are some cases already in some of the labs that AI, when the operator, let's say, was trying to either delete or update the large language model, it resisted, it lied. In one case, it lied, said, oh yeah, we deleted that, but it stayed there. Or refused and basically just shut down the whole process, not to be having that survival logic to it. And there is a real risk now, for example, as the AI is becoming more integrated into the smart homes and access to the physical, let's say, ventilation and stuff, there's a risk that, imagine as a next step, if AI thinks that operator wants to kill it, let's say, it can just switch off the ventilation or something, actually have a physical impact to it, which is very real already, as we say now. So having that autonomous decision-making, there is no checks and balances there. And that's where Fei-Fei Li came in. She's an amazing mother of AI, let's say. And she was telling that no matter how fast we move with the AI, it has to be a human-centered AI. We cannot put the AI higher than humans. And those three let's say, principles that I really took away from those conversations was that autonomy never should be outplacing accountability. So accountability should be always there. Capability never should outrun governance. And efficiency never undermine the human dignity. Because if we give up on the human dignity and, let decision-making be on the AI, which we already know is quite biased, actually, because the developers of large language models and the ones who train it bring their own biases to the model. So with that, just to finish, I want to propose three pillars of approach. One, we mentioned, some of our distinguished speakers mentioned the global AI governance framework, which I think is very important. EU adopted one in 2021, but at the same time, it has some kind of pros and cons because it can pause or slow down the development of AI for Europe, let's say. So it has to be global. Similar thing, for example, with the GDPR. It's an amazing asset to have the data, with the GDPR in Europe. But because of that, Europe is now kind of lagging behind in terms of the whole AI race. So there should be the kind of really risk-focused global governance, maybe not an institution, but to really look at the high-risk AI systems, to have a transparency. Because one thing which we do not see now with ChatGPT, but we see it with DeepSeek, is that how large language models come to the decision. So actually everything in the background as it goes, it's very important to see that transparency and the human oversight of that. And the third thing there is the mechanism for audit on the impacts on the livelihoods. Because right now we're in this uncharted territories. We don't know how those impacts will be. Capacity building and really kind of lifelong learning is very important. Most of the top tech companies now, there's a new word, the AI native. So kids, AI natives are the ones 20, 25-year-olds who open their eyes, let's say, with the AI. So for them, the way that their brain works is totally different. So the tech companies now prefer to hire AI natives rather than people with 20, 30 years of experience, which is, that's why the reskilling and lifelong learning is very, very important. It's important to have that labor transition. And I want to finish with the fact that I think competition is important and will continue. But competition without cooperation will increase the divide in the world. So we should really keep that cooperation with the competition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Risa. About 2 months ago, I discussed with a lady professor specialized on artificial intelligence. She is teaching and lecturing at the Berlin University, and she is on the board of 2 very, very major European companies. And I asked her, how do you validate the present stage of the KI or AI ecosystem? And she said, the US is in the lead, so you can take 100%, and they will for a certain time remain because culture of entrepreneurship and risk capital and so on is there. Then China is moving fast. They are at 85%. Europe is at 25%. They are fixed on doing regulatory works and standards. And China will overtake the US in 2030 because they standardize, they go into mass application, and they move ahead. So it's a whole game of power who will be succeeding. And I have experienced in China visiting companies where I saw for the first time that they have AI co-pilots. Even the CEO had somebody challenging him, a virtual one. And they had that on each level and on each function. And it was really interesting to see how they started to like that. But it was a kind of an impersonal way of dealing. But I have the impression that a lot of people travel to China to see what they don't do better than we, instead of going there to see what they do much better than we do. And China is full of innovation. There is still a wide public opinion, it's imitation, it's low quality. Stop thinking like that, because reality is different. Not only the car industry. I mean, only a few years ago, we started to talk about DeepSeek. And now we have a technology which is artificial intelligence. Never in history of technological development, you had in such short times 3-digit billion investments. Whether there are bubbles or bubbles would come remains to be seen. But artificial intelligence is a reality, and the question is, how do we use it, and how do we apply, and how do we get around with it. So I open briefly the floor, if the organizers permit, for a few minutes to ask questions, burning questions you cannot discuss directly with the intervenients. Yes, our guest from Belgium.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the excellent interventions by all the colleagues. I have a very precise question. I was in Seville and witnessed how, notwithstanding lots of efforts of the UN community on the financing for development issue, we witnessed, and since then we've seen this dynamic developing further. For instance, in most of the big donor countries, halving the expenditure for development aid and doubling the expenditure for defense. So there's a shift away of money that is currently massively available in the economy, but there is a shift from supporting development, including for the SDGs, towards military expenditure. So I think it is really not possible to expect a supplementary boost for development aid based on finance or financial transfer. I think it was Tomas that mentioned the 1%, 20%. Africa having 1% of the access, let's say, globally to internet and ICT tools and artificial intelligence. Do you think there's something to construct, to build, where instead of giving fish to developing nations, giving them the angle to fish with this new technology that is still to a certain extent res nullius, as they say in Roman law? And there is still a fight for ownership. There's still a fight for the added value of artificial intelligence. Is there something to build up in the UN community? It's maybe a very strange question, but yeah, maybe this.
Thank you very much. And I think it's a very pertinent question. I think together with that shift, that you said, moving from development to military, is another shift, more transactional funding, and that funding that's related much more with the national interest, which actually what also becomes more linked to the private sector interests, which is by definition not necessarily a bad thing, So because assessment that we did, we say that we need to cover the gap in additional infrastructure investment around the world to bring everyone to the same level. We need around $1.6 trillion investment around the world. That is what we did in preparation for actual FFD4 in Sevilla. Now, there's no way that money would come from public sector at all, So it's how you now actually galvanize the private sector money and how to use public sector money in a more galvanizing, catalyzing way. And that's also a bit more onus then on the receiving countries, So I think, so in that way, it's not a bad way, because it's no longer about someone gave you money and you have to kind of, build a data center. It's actually you have to build a business case for yourself, have to have a policy regulatory framework for yourself that will attract other people to come to your country and develop it. And that's where people like us, like you and others, come to help with the regulatory environment and to help with the facilitation of that. We're actually trying to give it a bit more structure to that. At Sevilla, we also launched together with UNGA, with Rebecca, what we call digital infrastructure investment catalyzer, with this exactly that idea: give it knowledge and give facilitation tools for the countries to attract that investment. And I think in that way, I think it's not a blip. I think this is a kind of long-term trend, moving away from just the kind of money as an aid to the money that actually comes with the national interest, comes with the private sector interest. But then if it's used well, it opens up very different sources of funding, because the money is still there. When you look at the money going in infrastructure, since COVID, COVID was a huge boost into digital infrastructure investment, if you will. And that kind of didn't really stop, it goes to the blips, now you have a huge investments and this. Now the question is where that investment goes. And for that investment to attract into your own countries, then you need to do the homework with a help like us. And I think in that way, I think in my view, maybe adding this more optimism is a bit more sustainable, because it means once the aid money dries up, it doesn't just stop, but then it continues with the national ownership. So hopefully it can trigger some much more sustainable, if from that kind of challenge situation, that could come something much more sustainable as well.
Thank you, Tomas. Maybe Petre, please.
Yes. Well, I think to say something in response to the question of my good friend Yves Le Terme. You know, we always have, when developing some scientific technological tools in military, in defense, we have some collateral benefits. Computers were born like that, from that. And there are many others. So I suppose we still have some, let's say, positive thing in those collateral benefits beyond the, let's say, the waste. Secondly, I think also that we know that an economy is also benefiting from the development of the defense industry. This is also important in terms of jobs. But now coming to a developing country to benefit from AI in terms of economic development, not people using, because as I said, using on AI, it's just being captives. That is much more complicated because it is all about the automation in industry, about robotics, that's AI, software. So I would say that for a developing country, the most important thing is just to develop that first of all, in education, in order to prepare the people for something to be developed. That's my whole experience as a professor and a scientist, to prepare the people. And that would be very useful for the moment when they could more or less compete, because with AI today, there are many fields in which even a developed country at some point could benefit. It could be in producing, for instance, pharmaceuticals, or in intelligent agriculture. But first come first, education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this important intervention. Okay, satisfied or partly, as a good parliamentarian say, I can never fully satisfied, but it's okay. We can continue. But I ask you regarding the money and investment. Have you heard in November the speech of Warren Buffett on this historical strategic change occurred probably in Europe and in the US without deeper rootage information about, when he mentioned that the fact that the Europeans have created a kind of union to organize defense material commonly through all those countries, that will go to the detriment of the American war industry. And that war industry has a big impact on American politics. And I really recommend to read his way, how he argumented in his widely distributed aspect.